Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News, the South Florida conservative news service. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the newer compare and contrast Representative Salazar's Dignity Act with the older Marco Rubio Act. First and foremost, I was down on Representative Salazar from the very beginning because, in true, I'm not really 100% Republican. She also calls it the Dignidad Act, meaning that she is focusing this exclusively on probably the idea of addressing Mexicans or somebody else from that part of the world instead of the worldwide immigration issue, which it really is. It's not all about the Mexicans. They were able to capture that and make it their own because of California, whereas there are tons of Central Americans kicking around over there, which is why we try not to use the word Latino or Latina because it's kind of too generic and probably racist, but that's just us. So what we're going to do here, since we'd already covered Rubio's um, old bill just a couple days ago, we're just going to compare the Dignidad, because I'll just call it that because that's what she wants to call it, right? With that. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more. This is going to be pretty much straight American policy. We're going to try to get some clarity on this, okay? And for those of you who just joined us, Senator Marco Rubio's 2013 Gang of Eight bill with the newly reintroduced because it failed again. This also failed. The two failed bills that are making a comeback. The Dignity Act of 2025, which is Congressman Maria Salazar from down near Miami area. So we have a little bit of history with her, and what are you going to do, right? Both of these proposals aim to tackle the complex challenge of immigration, balancing border enforcement, economic needs, and the legal status of millions of people currently living in the United States without authorization, which is another way of saying illegal immigrants, people who have broken the law and come into the United States illegally, and for the most part, are not working and building homes and learning English and things of that nature. Shit that they did back in the Ellis Island days. All right. So back in 2013, Senator Marco Rubio joined a bipartisan coalition, which was called the Gang of Eight, because there were some Republicans and Democrats, to propose a wide-ranging immigration reform package known as S-744, Senate Bill 744. Had a long name, so I'm not going to use it. This bill offered a structured path to legal status and eventually citizenship for the estimated at that time 11 million illegal immigrants in the country. It included a 13-year path to citizenship, expanded legal visa programs, a nationwide e-verify system, and about 46 billion in proposed border security measures. This is, of course, 2013. The numbers have changed, right? We know there are way more illegal immigrants in the country now, thanks to Joe Biden. The goal was a comprehensive solution, which was improve performance of enforcement, modernize the visa system, and bring people out of the shadows legally. It passed the Senate with broad support, which is why it should have been considered this time. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it. It passed the Senate 68-32, but it stalled in the House, okay? Can't have everything. Part due to the concerns about whether enforcement would really precede legalization. So for many conservatives, the concern was, would the enforcement promises actually be implemented? Because you're going, is that when was that? Still 13? So you're still in Obama, which meant you never knew, right? But he, as you know, deported way more people than President Trump did by far. But nobody cares anymore, right? Or would we see legal benefits granted without real changes to border security or illegal hiring? That was the situation there. So now let's fast forward to 2025. Representative Salazar has reintroduced the Dignity Act, co-sponsored by lawmakers from across the aisle again, not too far because she doesn't have too far to go. This bill also seeks to resolve the legal status of undocumented illegal immigrants, once again, let's call it what they are, who have been in the United States long term, but with key differences. Under Salazar's Act, eligible immigrants can apply for a 7-year dignity status. I'm not even going to, I'll get into it. They must pay fines from around 5,000 to 7,000. They can't receive federal benefits. They must work, obey laws, and contribute to the economy. And there is no automatic path to citizenship granted there. Okay. It includes tough enforcement components, mandatory nationwide e-verify, which should have been done forever, increased border patrol staffing, infrastructure and surveillance updates, offshore asylum processing to reduce these dangerous border crossings. So, unlike Rubio's bill, citizenship is not the default end goal. Instead, the focus is on legal structure and accountability without opening the door to voting rights or chain migration. However, I think that she is including dreamers with or anchor babies, if you want to call them what you will. So, not completely full of shit, but close to full of shit. So let's compare these two proposals from a center right perspective, because that's as close as you're going to get to the old days. All right. Rubio's 2013 bill, its strengths. And if you want to see this in all written out, you can go to www.southfloridaconservative.com and you'll see it there. And we'll go through all these things if you need to look it up for yourself. If you want to know how to vote or how to call your congressman and tell them how you'd like them to vote when the time comes. All right. So the Rubio bill strengths were comprehensive in general. It included significant border security spending and it had bipartisan support. You'd have to go back and see if those people are in office. I would say with the polarization of the Democrats around embracing socialism, you're going to have a traction issue here, regardless of what anybody says. Citizenship path, which is a concern, without guaranteed enforcement, may incentivize future illegal entry, and there's less control over chain migration. The Dignity Act, their strengths were strong on enforcement, no automatic citizenship, promotes work and restitution, limits chain migration. Okay, and the concerns, of course, are it still provides a legal status to those who entered illegally. Long-term status could evolve into permanent residency, and the future Congresses might expand it. So both bills attempted to balance compassion and law, but in different ways. Rubio's bill leaned more towards integration. The Dignity Act focused more on structured accountability. From our standpoint, in general, the key question is, can we reform immigration in a way that respects the rule of law, discourages future illegal entry, and ensures national sovereignty without ignoring the human and economic realities on the ground? It would be nice to say we're going to pick the country up and shake all the loose pieces back across the border. We obviously can't because of such a good job, A, the Biden administration has done, B, the Democrats have done with the sanctuary city systems, that it makes it more difficult, but not impossible, to take care of this problem. Okay, there's going to be more that has to be done. I have to blame President Trump and his DOJ for not being much more rigid in enforcing the law amongst these people. I know what Merrick Garland would have done to Donald Trump's people, and he's got to start to toughen up. All right. If he wants to get a win on this, he's already got issues with other issues out there. We're not going to say about who didn't kill itself, but that's a big thing for some people. This is my big thing. This is a big thing. If he wants to be successful in the economic renaissance of the United States, the reliance on slave labor has to stop. This is modern day emancipation, but we don't need to keep bringing people into the country when there are plenty of people available to do the jobs. They are. Look at the numbers, right? So the Dignity Act is a step toward the middle ground. Recognizes there's already millions are here, many are working and contributing, which I'm going to put a small W and a very small C on that and proposes a legal framework with strict conditions without promising citizenship or voting rights. It's the only two things I'm interested out of her whole thing because most of her shit's garbage too. Still, vigilance is warranted. Any legal status must be carefully implemented and enforced. It must not undermine those who came here legally or wait patiently abroad, which nobody in either of these bills seems to give a goddamn about. So, this is before we get to our conclusion. Here is the issue. You're worried about the feelings of, unfortunately, one particular group of illegals, which I'm going to have to say is people from Mexico, although there are people from other countries involved in it. We also have the state of Mexico, which is helping to sponsor dissent here in the United States. We have a narcotics flood coming out of the state of Mexico as well that's killing our people. We have them for years as a release valve dumping their people in the United States. And then they have this half-ass thing the last week where they're throwing these upper middle class, lower upper class people out of Mexico City because it's raising the prices. Do you know how big the city of Mexico is? It is gigantic. There could not fill enough parts of the city of Mexico to change the entire real estate stratus. It's impossible. It is impossible. It's probably one little section that was cool. These dickheads from up here moved down there, and they're not all from America. They're also Canadian. They're also from places in Europe, Spain, and the Canary Islands, and places like that that have moved there because they're tired of their own country or they can make their dollar go a little further. But they're not broke. They're not taking jobs away from the street sweepers. They are not forcing a permanent understructure of people in the United States, which the Mexicans would not allow. You know, those of you who have not been to Central and South America and in Mexico, there's some pretty racist bastards down in Mexico, especially against their own people, especially against the indigenous Indians that they complain about and hate in their own country. But when they come to the United States, they pretend that they are part of that, right? The mestizos, maricon, right? They'll come up here and say, oh, we used to own California and all that stuff. That's a story for a different day. It's tragic bullshit. It's socialist rhetoric at its finest, and Mexico has swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. The people do it to feel important. The government does it to shift awareness away from how entangled they are in cartel finances. Honestly, they are just a front door office for the Mexican cartels at this point. They are very, very rich people, and they were told that you continue to be rich people, we won't molest you as long as you never give us up to the Americans. It's a very similar situation that they had in Colombia, except there are no crusaders in Mexico like there were in Colombia who actually fought back against the cartels, except for the guy in the Sicario movie, and it's a movie. Okay? So, in conclusion on this, because, oh, and I forget, there are millions of other people trying to get into the United States that have real skills that come from all other parts of the world. This is a very ethnocentric bill on both sides. They know it, I know it, and you know it. Nobody's worried about a nuclear physicist from Uganda, right? Or wherever, Australia. An Aborigine says he wants to move here and has great calculus skills, which will help us to do something. And he also has $500,000 in the bank. He has to wait in line just like every other schmo while we have to legitimize all these people. There are not that many crops that need to be picked. And I'm in an agriculture state, and the agricultural people here have, for the most part, used the agricultural visa. This problem that we have in general from that part of the world is because of the Californians and Tejas and a couple of the other states with the cattle industry, which, if they hadn't been lazy, they could have worked things out. There are always people that want to work. There are always people that can do things. It's how much money can you make doing this business. Neither of these bills points out the fact Department of Labor should not be handling any of this stuff. That the visa programs and all that involving agriculture should be under Department of Agriculture. That Homeland Security should play a larger part in the vetting of this. That labor or any of this stuff, this menial labor shit, is part of the overall strategic makeup of the United States. Food is 30 to 50% more expensive because of the labor operations that we have here. 30 to 50% more. And we take a lot of the less labor intensive products and ship them out of the country. Grains, things like soybeans, things like that, they go out of the country as part of the strategic operations of the United States. If you were alive during Reagan and Carter and all that, you remember the grain shipments to Russia, or they would have starved, right? Let's not throw an opportunity away just because one of these people wants to make a name for themselves, especially Representative Salazar. Okay? So as we say, Rubio's plan was broader, but risked prioritizing legalization over enforcement. The Dignity Act is more restrained, with a focus on work, fines, and no green card. Both reflect different eras in the Republican Party, but both also remind us that immigration reform is not just about policy, it's about trust. And don't trust a damn person who's coming to come here and break the law. Can the American people trust that our borders will be secure? Well, we can at this point. More of this has to be enshrined in the law. More of it has to be enshrined in the law that if you as an executive decide not to enforce the law will still be enforced. That has been the problem of Biden. And the abuses of the Biden administration are what I judge the Trump administration by, because I can see the police state that Biden had. Those of you who have watched it can understand the FBI and the DOJ off the chain going crazy, right? Now, we don't even know that we have a DOJ or an FBI. It's gone that far in the other direction. Did those people all quit? Probably not, because they know they can outlast 4 years of Donald Trump. The people that were put in charge of them, on the other hand, they need to be called to task. Policy is policy. The United States has to get behind this. Anything that's going to pass on immigration in the next 3 years has to be able to be palatable to all the Republican Party, because the Democrats will vote against everything. Everything will be voted against by the Democrats, except for a few of the ones that are on the outside, or maybe people that's their last year in office. But the AOCs and stuff, they are brutal enforcers. They have been threatening people. Look it up, right? It's how it's done. When you're a thug for socialism, there is no stopping it. So look at these two. These are some of the ideas. People have to really sit down and say to themselves, it's not about the Mexicans. It's about a world of people wanting to come in. Ellis Island was about Europeans coming here. I mean, at one point they were upset because they said, well, there'll be too many Catholics, right? Because you had the Irish and the Italians and all these other people coming in, and they were from Catholic countries. Now, if that was your only problem today, you'd be like, oh shit, this is great. But we have a different religion that they talk about, which is not really a religion, but that's fine. They're problematic. There's nothing in here about that. There's nothing in here about extra security screenings. There's nothing in here what to do about people that lied on their applications to come to the United States. It's important to know that now. What are we going to do about them? What are we going to do about activists who come here and lie and say that they weren't activists or trained operatives in other countries, come to the United States, get set up in socialist-leaning organizations, and then start terrorizing the cities and the universities? None of that's mentioned either, because they're keeping your eye on the prize, which is the Mexicans, which is not the real problem. Their problem in Los Angeles. There's 48 other states we can play around and we don't have to worry about. And if people were worried about, oh, I want to have Spanish-speaking workers, Puerto Rico is considered almost a state. You could have gone to Puerto Rico and employed those people and everybody would have been happy, right? But there's a history of idiocy going on in the California-Tejas border, and it has never changed. So get out of that mindset. Look at the United Nations all wants to come here and get a piece of the action. You see the Somalis up in the north, they don't give a F about us. They are here to grift as much money as possible and give their own clans back in Somalia as much juice as they can, as much cash as they can, and make them as politically viable against the government of Somalia and probably the Turks, because the Turks are there. And what can they do to increase that? And then they will never retire. They'll just keep that flow of money and bullshit going on. They've said it, everybody is here to take. Nobody is here to add. So until you can cut that shit off in the immigration policies, you're always going to have this problem. But anyway, that's enough of that because it just gets you annoyed. And that's all. Talk to you later on.